Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of Mingling with David Lam. Wait, what did Corinne want us to do?
Yeah, was it Mingling or something? Well, Corinne Malcolm, our dear friend, she hosts this Trail Society podcast through Free Trail. And she brought up the idea that maybe we should have our own podcast. But yeah, I think it's like something like Mingling with D Lam.
Well, this is either the fourth episode of Shoe Reviews with D Lam or the first episode of Mingling with D Lam. Either way, we're stoked to be back here. We have some shoes to review, and I have some other special questions I'm going to ask David as we talk about the shoes. I'm Tony DiPasquale, aka Tony with a Sony.
I'm David Lam, and a Bay Area resident, and D Lam with the camp sometimes, they call me.
Hell yeah. We are here in Golden Gate Park near the Conservatory of Flowers. We found a nice little nook where there isn't any people and hopefully not too much wind. So without further ado, David, what do you have for us today?
So I brought some shoes that I've just been testing and been very excited about. Some shoes that have been out for a while, some shoes that are very, very limited. So I thought I'd bring them here. So first off, there's this pair of shoes, the Zegama 2 from Nike Trail that have come out for a little bit of time. I've put a decent amount of miles in these shoes. Been very excited about these. The updates that came out in these shoes have kind of hit the mark that based on criticisms that I had on V1. So I'm very excited for those. A pair of shoes that are rarely reviewed, the La Sportiva Prodigio. La Sportiva is a brand in the trail world and also in the ski world that has been around for a while. They make really strong, durable shoes. But these shoes are kind of the first of a kind, and I'll kind of explain why in a bit. And then
Love the colors on these.
Yeah, the color in these, kind of rare for La Sportiva to have shoes that are this bright and this kind of like color blocking motif. They usually go with really boring blacks and some oranges and some yellows, but nothing like this. And then kind of last but not least, have the HOKA Tecton X 2.5. These were limited release out during Western States Week. These were made in kind of made along with Jim Walmsley, who won Western States this year. And the shoes kind of, only 100 pairs were made. They were made to kind of his specs. And they're a super exciting shoe, and I'll kind of explain why later.
And you haven't touched these, it looks like. These are fresh, huh?
These are fresh. I've worn them around the house. Yeah.
Nice, okay. Well, awesome. So where do you want to start?
Let's start with the Nike Trail. So,
okay.
Yeah, these shoes, Nike Zegama Trail. I would say these are the go-to Nike kind of do-it-all shoe right now. It has the Zoom X foam, which kind of anyone who's wearing Nike knows and loves. The same foam compound that's found in their kind of super shoes that on the roads. And it also has Vibram also. And so I think the way I would put it is like their first shoe came out, they tried to use the Nike compound for the rubber also. The shoe was amazing. I loved the Zegama V1. The only gripe I had about it was that anytime you bring it on slick rocks or on slick kind of terrain, it would just slip all over the place. And so they kind of fixed that issue by introducing this Vibram light base also. And you have a pretty decent amount of it here, and it kind of resolved all those issues. Like every time I bring these on more kind of technical terrain or more slippy terrain, it handles itself really well.
So the first version didn't have the Vibram?
No, it did not.
And they only did half a sole here, it looks like.
Yeah, so they generally do that. A lot of shoes do that just to shave weight. So they'll leave this area kind of bare and it'll just really exposed to the foam. And the reason to do that is to shave weight. And so they only have the rubber in the areas where your foot kind of hits the most, which is like this outer part of your heel and then your forefoot and obviously your toe.
Nice. I didn't realize this was also Vibram. I didn't realize they made a white Vibram. I've only ever seen like this.
Yeah, Vibram they work with a lot of different brands now, and they kind of mold it to whatever color specs that these brands have. So whether it be white, whether it be this kind of off green color, or as we'll see later, black here in the Hokas.
Interesting. Okay, and so what do you think about this upper? Because this is obviously kind of a strange.
Yeah. So I think based on, if you were to compare these to V1, I prefer the upper a little bit in the V1 more, but these handle really well. It has this kind of like a nice booty style collar here. In my experience, it doesn't really do too much in terms of like, fending off debris that gets in your shoe. But I think it holds the ankle area really well. I haven't had any issues with kind of rolling my ankle. This sits on a pretty high stack height. So any kind of little proprioceptive like nudges that the shoe can make in your feet and your legs, that I'm all about it. This holds your ankle pretty well. The upper on this is very solid. It holds your foot really well. I haven't had any issues with it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so why did you pick this one to review today?
I think it's an exciting shoe. I think if anybody kind of knew about the Nike Zegama 1, again, it was a really exciting shoe. There's a couple points of criticism that like people didn't like, mainly the V-Room outsole. So I brought it here because I was like, okay, now Nike has a shoe that they can really put up against like the best trail shoes out there. I feel like the Nike Ultrafly kind of fell flat. That was a carbon-plated race day shoe that they had. A lot of people do like it. Like Tyler Green and Rachel Drake wore that shoe for their Western States performance. I just prefer this shoe. I think it kind of covers a lot of bases. It does a lot of things well. It's light enough and sturdy enough that you can bring it on race day, but it also like handles really well for your training miles.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, what's up next?
Yeah, these are the Sportiva Prodigio. This is the first of this kind that I've seen from La Sportiva. I've been a huge fan of theirs. The only problem is here in California, you really need a shoe that what La Sportiva offers. They make really sturdy, strong mountain shoes. So you find yourself on more shale terrain. It handles really well. It takes a lot to kind of rip through a pair of their shoes. It uses this like friction outsole rubber compound that they use, and it's one of the best out there. The problem with it is that it weighs a lot. And it's just kind of due to like the amount of materials they use on their shoe. So this shoe kind of flips that on its ear a little bit, because it like as you said earlier, there's just the color scheme on this is like so loud, which La Sportiva has never done before. All their shoes have been really boring, muted colors. I would say borderline ugly.
Okay.
This one,
Throwing shade, okay.
This one, depending on the criticism that I've heard, people think is still ugly. I do not. I think it's really cool. Yeah, really cool, really loud colors. Yeah. And performance-wise, man, this shoe handles so well. I just got back from 2 weeks in Tahoe, so I found myself on like very different terrain. So some rocky stuff, some more technical stuff. This shoe just handles so well, and also it's very light, and it uses like a very good supercritical foam, so it's really soft and responsive. And if I needed to kind of open up my stride, it handled well in that regard. And then also like kind of gave me a good lockdown, where if I found myself on more technical terrain, I wouldn't feel like I was slipping all over the place.
Okay. Yeah. So where would you use this shoe versus something like this?
Yeah, I would say this is your kind of like go fast shoe on slightly more technical terrain. Like I wouldn't use this for desert trails. Okay. It might be a little bit of a clunker in that for that type of terrain, but for stuff that you would find on most mountain ranges and ridge lines, I would feel really safe in this shoe. It bites really well. Like La Sportiva uses this kind of lug pattern.
I'm looking at it.
Yeah, it just bites really well on different kind of terrain, and I just haven't had any issues with this one.
It's funny. It's almost the inverse. Oh, I guess no. It's they're both like V's.
Yeah, I would say
like upside down V's.
I say the Nike ones is more like a chevron pattern.
Yeah.
This one, I don't know if you can see it, but it's like a U. So yeah, I think it just bites really well down on the trail.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, before we get to our last shoe, you had mentioned you were wearing these in Tahoe. So I want to talk a little bit about what we were doing in Tahoe these past 2 weeks. So we had 2 events.
Yeah.
Tell me about what you were doing at these events and what your experience was like.
So I called this week that we just went through probably the best week in North American trail running. It's the week that bridges Broken Arrow, Sky Race, and Western States 100. So it takes, every year it takes, they're 1 week apart, and it takes place in the Palisades, Tahoe area. And it's incredible. I think it's just like everyone international comes over and runs these races, and it's just a great time. Now each year they're like heightening the activations that they do during that week in between the races. So it's just a lot of fun to just be out in Tahoe during that week.
Hell yeah, it is. It's been a great time. And it's funny because I feel like Broken Arrow and Western States are two very different races.
Yeah.
And they have two very different energies.
Yeah.
Broken Arrow is much shorter races. I mean, there's still an ultra, but shorter in terms of what ultras can get up to. But you kind of stay there on location, which I love about Broken Arrow because it's a party all weekend. No one has to move anywhere. You can kind of be at Palisades Mountain Resort, and people are doing races. People are just having fun. People are, doing all these event activations. And then Western States is like this giant anticipatory build toward Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Where the gun goes off at 5 a.m. and then everyone makes their way to Auburn.
Yeah.
So what do you feel like? How do you see these two events? How do you feel about them? Yeah,
I think Broken Arrow is more like a festival. So you go there, and like to your point, everyone just kind of congregates in the Olympic Valley in Palisades, Tahoe, which is a ski resort. And so you stay there. A lot of your festivities are there. A lot of the events all happen there. Versus an event like Western States, it's more like a caravan. So you start at Palisades, Tahoe, but then you make your way down point to point down to Auburn. So things are just more hectic. There's a lot more, hurry up and waiting. And versus like somewhere like Broken Arrow, I feel is just more accessible in that way because like even though it is branded as a sky race, which is very intimidating, I feel like it just does well as a way to like have this very community feel to it. Versus Western States, I think it's less so that. It's like you kind of have to know what you're doing to kind of really experience it in a very smooth way. Versus if not, then it just becomes like a very chaotic mess.
Totally.
Yeah.
So you've become more involved with Broken Arrow weekend.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you participate in that weekend, or I guess not even just that weekend? It's a lot of time, but talk about that.
Yeah. So I think every year I've been a racer. I've been part of the audience, just there cheering for friends. This year was very unique. I got to be part of their advisory council. So a lot of feedback that Broken Arrow gets is that it's not inclusive enough, especially for people, BIPOC folks, and also adaptive athletes and all that. And so as part of an effort this year, we wanted to kind of change that. So Brendan and Ethan over at Broken Arrow, they set up like a group of, I think it was like 12 of us, and just kind of impose more initiatives to bring more people of color and different folks to this race. And again, like being on the mountains, recreating in the mountains, it's a privileged kind of activity. And so we wanted to kind of help mitigate that experience for a lot of people as much as possible. So like whether that be like giving them free entries or housing, getting to Tahoe is already a huge battle for people, but also like staying there, it's very expensive. It's a ski resort. So like being able to have those initiatives, they kind of took our feedback as the advisory council and just kind of like, and also took our lead in a lot of outreach and stuff that we did for different groups in our communities.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Did you feel like there was a noticeable difference this year versus last year? Because this is the first year the advisory committee has kind of like been there.
Yeah. I personally did notice it on a micro and macro level. I think I saw specific groups that we reached out to that were there, and it's like these people of color from down in Southern California, down up in the Bay Area, everywhere. And I also noticed like kind of the conversations that were going on, and I did notice a difference there too. It was just like people were like, oh man, everything like feels more and more and more this year. Either it means like more people or maybe more different people, whatever that means to you. So it just kind of seeing the fruits of that labor, I guess they would call it. It was really a cool sight to see this year.
Very cool. That's encouraging.
Yeah.
Do you feel, trail running in general has trouble with this, and do you feel like Broken Arrow is going in the right direction?
Yeah.
Are you excited for doing more things? What's kind of the future you see?
Yeah, I think the problem with outdoor sports is I wouldn't say there's a degree of gatekeeping, but there kind of is, because the influence starts from years in the past, And for me personally, being able to kind of have the privilege to kind of like play outside and all that wasn't afforded to me, because like my family was busy surviving, and so like that privilege wasn't afforded to me. But now I think me and also a lot of people in my lot in life, like they're able to kind of start like kind of expanding themselves and seeing what else is out there. But again, you don't know what you don't know, and it's like intimidating to kind of get started. So I think like providing people with the gear and like the place, like just this area is where mountain sports happen, and so like come here and experience it for yourself. So yeah, I think in that regard, it's been a really, it's in a lot of ways like I never saw this part of my life for myself, and it's kind of a cool like new chapter of that. So like just trying to get more people to like enjoy the stuff that I like to enjoy.
Hell yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah.
All right, I want to talk more about your life next break.
Yeah.
But for now, let's move on to the HOKAs.
Oh, yeah. So these shoes, man, it's one of the shoes that came out, and if you're like a hype beast and like sneakers and stuff like that, you always think about these drops, these rare drops, and like you hop on these apps and you're like battling bots to try to get these shoes. This is like that on steroids, because like this was only available in 100 pairs and available if you were at Palisades Tahoe, and you had to go through this like reservation process and all that.
Verified fan.
Yeah, exactly. You have to verify yourself, and it's just an exciting shoe that came with a story. Like Jim Walmsley, one of the best ultra runners of our time, he worked with HOKA to kind of put this shoe together, and he of course won UTMB last year, and then again won Western States this year. I have it under good authority that he wore a shoe like this shoe at Western States this year, but not the exact one. But as far as we know, this was the exact shoe that he wore for UTMB, which is incredible. And I can definitely see why, having worn the shoe around. It's it's an incredible mountain shoe, and I know it looks like crazy high and like a boat, but it sits on dual layer PIBA foam, which is like the same stuff they use for Rocket X. A lot of their road carbon plated shoes are built on this, but it's just like a lot more of it. Like if you look at it from the sky view, you can see the whole circumference of the foam, which is cool. It adds to like a stability kind of aspect of it. And then you have the same kind of V-Rim light base also that I was talking about with this Nike, but it has like 5mm depth lugs.
Yeah, they're big lugs.
Yeah, so it's just like super grippy. Again, like if you find yourself in the Alps, like at UTMB, it just kind of handles itself really well across different terrain. And then what I'm really excited about is that it uses this Matrix upper, which is like this Kevlar material upper, where we haven't seen a HOKA with that material since the Evo Speedgo, which is arguably the greatest HOKA trail shoe of all time. So for a while, they had this partnership with Matrix, which is this company. Whatever happened, they had a falling out, and now they're back, and they're starting to introduce this material back to the shoes. Like I think the Tecton X2 had it, but it's just an incredible light material that drains so well. So if you like find yourself in the stream or something, it just performs well. And then it uses quick laces, which is not my favorite thing, but it does have regular laces that you can switch out. And then I think most noticeable is this gaiter. I'm kind of on the fence about gaiters in general. I luckily again live in California, and there's just not a lot of opportunities for debris to fall in your shoe to the point where it's annoying. But I could definitely see this being a pretty good shoe for like the desert. Like I know Hayden Hawks wore this shoe when he won Black Canyon. Again, it's on desert trails, has a lot of debris. And yeah, I'm kind of curious to take this shoe onto like terrain that actually calls for it, where like if you're at the threat of like debris coming in, and just see how this blocks it.
Very cool. So you have this quick lace thing here. This is a very, in my limited mind, this is a very Salomon shoe kind of thing. But Salomon has usually something you can tuck this in. Can you not tuck this in somewhere here?
Yeah, so in Salomon shoes, they call it the garage. It's like this little pocket that you just like stuff everything in. Unfortunately, this one doesn't have it. It does have these two little like bungee areas. So what I've been doing is putting this down and just like kind of sticking it in there. And yeah, and just kind of like whatever. It looks super messy, but it gets the job done.
Okay, it doesn't bounce around too much.
It doesn't bounce out, especially if you like kind of overlap it and do all that good stuff. It kind of locks in pretty well. Yeah.
So another question I had, do you know what they changed for Jim? Do you know what his feedback was with the normal Tecton X2?
Yeah. I don't know specifically. There is an episode of, it's like the Jim, I think it's a Jim Walmsley movie. There's a great clip on there where he goes to the lab and like helps create the shoe. And they set him out with like 10 prototypes. And like, so it goes through a lot of iterations. When you kind of know how to prototype a shoe, there's like, I don't know, there's like 10 iterations plus of like one shoe. So like, I'm pretty sure, like, from what I know of Jim Walmsley, I know he likes like kind of a lot of foam. This one has tons of it. But then the problem with like having a carbon plate, and I think this one still uses like that dual split carbon plate, yeah. But the problem with carbon plate is that it kind of makes you feel unstable on the trail, and the way they kind of fix that is just kind of have more foam, so you're on a wider platform, so it feels more stable.
Okay.
So yeah, whether the plate kind of does what it needs to do, it's up for debate. But I can really feel how stable the shoe is just based on like how wide the midsole foam is.
Very cool. So what would you use this shoe? What kind of terrain would you run on? Where would you go with this shoe versus these other two?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. Oddly enough, out of all these three shoes, this one looks the chunkiest one. This one's the lightest. This one's the lightest one.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I weigh all my shoes like a crazy maniac that I am.
Do you know off the top of your head?
I do. So yeah. So these come in at 9.1 ounces in my size men's 8. These come in at right under 10 ounces in my men's 8, and then these come in at 8.8 ounces. Wow. Which for a burly mountain shoe is pretty light. I wouldn't say it's the lightest. It's definitely not the lightest in my general quiver, but I'm really excited to take the shoe on just all kinds of terrain, because I think like it does well as a fast moving shoe, and it does well as like a shoe that if you're just on your feet for 10 plus hours and then ultra, like I just think it does super well. These ones, I think at least the Nike is proven at longer on your feet distances. Like if you're out there for 10 plus hours, the shoe has been proven to do well. This one, I could see my legs and feet getting a little tired. It's a little closer to the ground. It's a little more firm, I guess. And I would say this shoe is more of I don't know, like 50 miles at most distance and lower. And I would say these are, I mean, proven at like 100 miles plus.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Very cool. Okay, so if a friend comes to you looking for their next trail shoe, which one are you going to recommend for what?
Damn, that's a great question. I mean, if you can get your hands on these.
Well, you can't, right? You said only 100, unfortunately?
Yeah, unfortunately not. I think if they needed like a do-it-all shoe, I would actually go with the Sportiva Prodigio. Okay. It kind of, again, it's been my surprising go-to shoe. I've just been grabbing it for, you know, whether it be like shorter, faster runs, or kind of stuff where you're just not scrambling, but you're definitely on terrain that you're like hiking through more. This just feels more sturdy and strong. The problem with the Nike is that it runs well. Like if you're on stuff that you find them in headlands where you're just kind of on terrain that you can flow, does super well. But as soon as you get on more technical terrain where you're forced to like push off on different directions of the foot, it becomes a little messy. And for that reason, I haven't figured out how to lace this in a way that makes my foot feel stable. And for that reason, I deduct points in terms of like an overall shoe.
Interesting. Okay. Were you running around, crewing, pacing in any of these this past 2 weekends?
Yeah, you saw me in these shoes. I wore these the whole time from morning, and the partial reason was I just love the way it looks. It's just like a loud. Style. It's a loud color, and you know I wore them with matching socks, so it matches this orange color. And
nice. La Sportiva socks are different?
They're a different brand, but it's stupid little style kind of niches or style details like that I really like. I just wasn't ready to take these out yet, but yeah, these again they did well. I was running all over the place. I was running through water, and it just drained well. It ran well. I never felt worried in these shoes.
Very cool. Yeah. Anything else you'd like to say about these shoes?
I think overall, trail running shoes are in such an exciting place. Like even when we were getting ready to make this video, I was like, yeah, I could pull out like, I don't know, like the A6 Metaspeed Paris, like which is my favorite kind of carbon racer right now. But it's like, they're playing with very marginal gains now, like the road shoe world. It's like all the shoes are more or less the same. You pick a brand, you pick a model that you like, and you stick with it. They make very small changes. But with trail shoes, it's like you can play around with so many different materials, so much different compounds, uppers, how to make it stronger, sturdier, and all that. And like look at the palette of these shoes. They look so different design-wise. And they are different design-wise, and it just takes like, once you get into like the very key details of it, it just gets really interesting. Like I feel the evolution of trail running shoe. This is where we might be at the apex. This is it. Like
wow,
like a shoe like this is like the apex because I just don't know where else they're gonna go from here. Yeah.
Is there a rumored Tecton X3?
So there is. And the Tecton X3 is gonna be releasing, and I think if you're talking about it from like a marketing standpoint, they're doing this as a limited release as to build up the suspense for the 3. But from what I know, the details of the 3, they're just different enough where it makes this still I wouldn't say better, but just different. Like I know on good authority again that this shoe was built on its own last, which for anybody who like knows about shoemaking, building your own last is really expensive. I heard each of these shoes costs HOKA $700 per shoe to make, so they're charging $300 a pop. They're actually losing out money, which sounds crazy, but if you kind of talk about engagement, impressions that it makes, I think it pays for itself. Again, HOKA does really well. Money is not that big an issue for them. So yeah, I think stories like that, it's kind of cool. And it's kind of why I wanted this shoe, because it kind of has a cool story behind it.
Very cool. Well, speaking of money not being an issue, tell me about your Nvidia investments. No, I'm kidding. I'd like to, so you were celebrating something else 2 weekends ago at this point?
Yeah.
So there was a big birthday for you.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what this birthday was and how you're feeling about it?
Yeah, I think round numbers for age and full decades are like just, they feel like they don't come as quickly, even though like time seems to be flying. So I just turned 40, which for me, I just never thought the day would come. Seemed like when I was a kid, it seemed so far away. When I was in my 20s, it seemed so far away. When I was in my 30s, it seemed so far away. But being 40, again, nothing crazy has changed. Like I'm still running a lot. I'm still like, my body hasn't like broken down overnight. But in the past couple of weeks, I have found that I've like, and I think it aligns with what everyone who's in their 40s has told me, where it's just like, you kind of run out of, shit, I was gonna cuss. You
can cuss.
Oh,
I'll beat it.
You run out of F's to give, and as you get older, it just, you're more aligned with what you like, and you just don't have time for what you don't like. And I can start seeing that in my own life. So I'm getting rid of a lot of like the noise and stuff that kind of doesn't serve me or doesn't bring me joy. And I've started to kind of do that purge. And it looks very simple. It's like, I don't know, using social media less, because again, a lot of the information that you get in social media doesn't really serve you unless you have better control of your relationship with it. That goes into my usage of Strava, Instagram, all that. And also just like putting more value in kind of my relationships with people, and whether it be on a small or large scale, it's just, I feel like that's really important. And then obviously when you get older, you're like, I don't want to be by myself, or I don't want to end up by myself. So it's like, you nurture the friendships and relationships you have now in hopes that they're still there later in your life.
Totally, totally get that. Yeah. So if you had to characterize your first 10 years of life and some lessons you learned from 0 to 10, what would you say that was?
I say like act on impulse more. Like the nice thing about when I was ages 0 to 10 was it was pre-internet, and I kind of knew a life where there was no internet, there's no technology. So I just had these great memories of like getting on the bike with my neighborhood friends and just like riding around for hours. And like my parents had no way of finding me because there was no cell phones, there's no tracker, there's no like, and like I think just that sense of adventure and just like being in the moment, just cultivate that. And I think I wish I just did more. I wish I just like kind of got into trouble more and all that. because like that's the perfect time for that.
Okay, so then 10 through 20, teen years.
Yeah, 10 to 20, you know, got into a lot of trouble.
You were just saying you wanted to get in more trouble when you
Yeah,
were pre-10.
and then yeah, because you know, you get older and say, you know, 10 to 15 was more or less a blur. You're still like at home watching TV, blah, blah, and then you get your driver's license. And then you get your own car, and then things start changing.
And you have emotions now. And
you got emotion, yeah, you're like, exactly, you go through like puberty, and then you're, you know, you can drive, you can meet up with people, for me, women that I was interested in, and then you just like, you start building that. Yeah. And like, you think you're invincible, and you think like every decision you make is permanently gonna affect your future, which is not the case. Like I call it the illusion of permanence, where it's like, you're like young and naive, and you think like everything is just how it is, and without like possibility of changing and evolving over time. So, you know, I would say ages 10 to 20 was a very exciting time. And again, you're still just kind of learning and maturing as much as you possibly can.
Great. Okay, so 20 to 30, now we're getting into the meat. You're actually an adult.
Yeah.
You're still a little bit of college, but you get out of college and you have life.
Yeah. I think 20 to 30 was a really exciting time for me. I like, man, I took my social life by like the horns, and like learn how to like socialize, and like, again, talk to women, which is like, I'm starting to realize it's a trait that's like, it's hard to teach and hard to learn, because like as a young man, that's like, a lot of your self-worth is kind of tied up into that, as much as I hate to admit it. I also spent half that decade in Vietnam, I lived in Vietnam for like 6 years, and that was an incredible experience, and also kind of like prolonged the feeling that I was like maybe putting a pause on real life and just like out there enjoying myself and having too much fun. And then, yeah, I think straight transitioning into my 30s to 40s, I just kind of, I felt like I needed to come back to the States, and like there was almost a reckoning for all of that like carefreeness that happened from my 20s, 30s. And 30s has just been like, there was a lot of struggle, there was a lot of heartbreak, and there was a lot of loss, but also like setting myself up with like a really strong foundation, and like that led me into my 40s, where now I feel like all the lessons I learned from the last decade have like provided me with so much calm and stability and like self-assuredness. And I feel like this is what I'm gonna work with for the rest of my life, is just like discern all that like, I don't know, that like fear of is my self-worth like not valuable and all that. Like all those fears is kind of like, I wouldn't say they disappeared, but they're just not as prevalent anymore.
You start running out of F's to give.
You run out of F's to give, yeah. Okay. Devin Yanko, she was one of the first people to text me. She's like, welcome to the best decade. She's like, I've ran out of F's to give, and I keep running out of more. So I was like, one of the best texts I got.
I feel like she ran out of F's to give like 10 years ago.
A while ago, for sure, yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, so it's hard to even think of 10 more years, because that's 50, and that sounds so old.
Yeah.
But what are you excited about for these next 10 years? What are you looking forward to?
That's a good question. I've been really careful about not thinking so far into the future, because I think like if you were to kind of take the every 10 age, every denomination of age, 10, like 10, 20, 30, if you're like, hey, how do you feel about the next decade? I'd be like, I have no idea. And so right now I have no idea. And like, if I were to like kind of figure it out based on what I've seen in other 50-year-olds, like it's more or less the same. I don't know, everyone's like maybe still in their career, but in a more established part of it. And also like enjoying time with their friends. For me, it's kind of interesting because I got into running late, and now running is such a huge part of my identity and like kind of my lifestyle. And luckily, I'm seeing so many people who turn 50 and their athletic like prowess never changes. They are like still as fit, they're still as fast, they still run dipsy, run fast and place like high, and it's like it kind of, it's really relieving for me, because it makes me feel like we're getting older, but we're not succumbing to like mortality. It's like I think there's a lot of life to live, and so I'm excited for that. I'm excited for like the newness of life, and like kind of what the next decade would bring. If it doesn't change, I'm okay with that. If it gets better, even better.
Very cool. You mentioned when we were talking about Broken Arrow about how you feel like you're in this next phase of your life where you're starting to bring other people into the things that you're passionate about running, right? So how do you look forward to that? You know, do you want to keep doing that, do more of it? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's, on a small level, it's like kind of just talking to more people. I think I see the impact of representation, just like people who reach out to me and say like, it's so cool to see an Asian guy at a race like Western States or like at, you know, whatever race, because again, our sport is not the most diverse sport. And like, if I can keep doing that and having conversations and like teaching people what I've learned, you know, I've learned a good amount about gear and like how to, you know, do stuff in the outdoors. Again, I'm not like an expert or anything, but like if I can kind of, you know, reduce the barrier to entry for somebody, then I'm all about having these conversations.
Oh yeah, very cool. Yeah. All right, before we wrap up, anything else you'd like to say about that or these shoes we have in front of us?
No, I think, you know, this has been too long of a pause between our last videos.
I know.
These are always fun. People have reached out to us and just asking, what about these videos? And I hope that people reach out more and just kind of let me know what kind of shoes they want reviewed, or like, again, I'm a huge gear guy, and since I was a kid, I just like loved spending all my money on shoes. Luckily, I'm in like a sport now where shoes are kind of the most important thing. So the more I get to like kind of dissect and like fall into the details of these things, I love doing that.
Very cool. Well, if you have anything else you'd like David to review, other shoes or other things in general, let us know. Also, if you like this format where we asked David some more personal questions during this review, let us know. Other than that, I think we're good, man. Thanks for doing this. Yeah. And yeah, we'll chat soon.
Hopefully.
Alrighty. Thanks everyone for joining us. Bye-bye.